Hey everybody, Nate the Voluntaryist here, and tonight I am joined by Night Shift 10,000, Eso, and my 2 cents. Take her for what it's worth.
Thank you, Nate.
Nice.
Look, if Reason were on my stream, I would be saying, Reason, that voice in your head you should listen to. Man, I miss that guy.
Yeah, really.
But he'll be back one day. No worries, everybody.
Do you know what happened to him?
He's got stuff on his plate financially. So,
oh, all right.
Yeah, so he just needs to get stable first before he can come back. So, anyways, so tonight I wanted to discuss the further developments in regards to COVID-19 or the coronavirus. In a ways, it's kind of like a continuation from the discussion that 2 Cents held with me, Night Shift, Eso, and Filthy Heretic. I wish Filthy Heretic were here, but
I could invite him.
Go ahead.
All right.
Feel free. So, yeah, there were other things I wanted to discuss in relation to that. I've already covered one small part of it, which was like an episode or 2 ago. So I think we can go ahead and take a look at some of the things I wanted to discuss. The first thing I wanted to look at is what's going on here in the People's Republic of California, which is where I am stuck at. When I told the base Pluto, what I refer to California as, he's like, "Oh, I got to use that. That's the best." So the first thing I wanted to discuss is one of the most recent headlines, which is Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti threatens to cut power and water for businesses who refuse to go on lockdown during this pandemic. And Filthy Heretic, glad you could join us.
Oh, hi. And glad I could be here. Oh, hi, what's up?
We can't hear you.
Everyone else can hear me?
I can hear you.
Fine.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, wait. Can everyone hear Filthy Heretic?
Yep.
Yes.
I can at least.
Uh-oh.
And I can hear you just fine.
Try leaving and coming back, see if that can fix it.
All right, hold on.
All right, so I wanted to get everybody's reaction in regards to Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti threatening to cut the power and water for businesses who don't want to go into lockdown. Obviously, I can see that as I think it's pretty clear that this is the state looking for an excuse to take control whenever there is an emergency or quote unquote emergency, because they do it all the time. They even did that during 9/11, for instance.
Oh, absolutely. You know, their main justification for their crazy expanses of their influence over the white market economy recently are that they're trying to prevent the spread of the virus, and they're trying to make resources more accessible. Mm-hmm. But then you see them, even if you were to accept that, then you see them doing things like this with the supply chains that they've monopolized. And, it doesn't really make sense because they're preventing people from obtaining resources. They're seizing people's savings and their assets if they try and save up a bunch of resources. It becomes really obvious that it's not really about trying to prevent the spread of the virus. It's more about trying to make people dependent on supply chains which the state can control.
Right.
And I think it's important to note that in every single one of these emergencies, the state always claims this is a temporary measure just to deal with the emergency, and then we'll give up our power afterwards. You know, it's kind of like, I hate to use this analogy, but I think it's perfect. It's like Star Wars when Emperor Palpatine says, you know, it is with great reluctance I take on these powers, but I'll absolutely give them up when this crisis is over. But the fact, but they never do. FDR's programs that were instituted during the Great Depression never went away. The Patriot Act and all the national security measures that were put in place at post 9/11 never went away. And
like
now this, and all this massive government spending and, you know, eternal quantitative easing, it's never going to go away either. And the nationalization of all these industries, be it explicit nationalization like Bernie Sanders wants, or unofficial nationalization through, you know, government manipulation, threatening to shut and like threatening, if you don't do what we say, we're going to shut off your water and power. Okay, the government might not be overtly nationalizing that industry, but they're effectively saying we control everything you do. So it's functionally the same thing.
They're already at the point where they're outright nationalizing certain industries and turning the U.S. into at least a partial command economy. I mean, what was that thing called? The National Production Act or something that was signed into
Defense Production Act.
Yeah, that's the one.
And
put into legislation.
Oh, and you've seen the story where Trump ordered General Motors to make ventilation systems.
Yeah, of course.
The Defense Production Act was invoked.
Yeah.
It's pretty unambiguous at this point.
Who here? Let's take a vote here. Who thinks that the Defense Production Act is going to go away after this crisis is over?
Nope.
No.
Didn't think so. And I don't think there's very many people who would. I don't think there's very many people, even among the normies today, who would think that that's ever going to go away ever. But with this in mind, there is one observation I wanted to make about the Los Angeles mayor shutting down electricity and water to certain businesses that don't comply with his arbitrary dictates. What do those two things, water and electricity, have in common? They are utilities. And what has the government been trying to do with the internet for like the last several years? Make the internet not just nationalize it, but make it a public utility. In other words, they're going to give the government a monopoly on being able to dictate who does and does not get to have internet. How does that sound, huh?
You're talking about net neutrality, right?
Net neutrality, yes, of course. But tell me, how does that sound? Giving a government the ability to monopolize the internet and determine who can and cannot get it based on entirely arbitrary characteristics. Sound like fun?
Browsers.
Well, yeah, this is exactly what I was, talking about. What I was pointing out is that if the government directly if it is claiming ownership over these supply chains specifically, then that's all that means. It's kind of hilarious. They try and frame it like when Trump did invoke the Defense Production Act. The way that it was framed was that was a move for the sake of efficiency. That is just laughable, because what that means is now there's a bunch of resources which could have been used creating other resources to create an abundance of things that are going to end up sitting in a landfill. And the real kicker is that people are able to 3D print these medical supplies, functional versions of these types of supplies, which Trump invoked the Defense Production Act to create, which the state, Trump, however you want to characterize that. And when these private people, when these hospitals try and 3D print these very cheap utilities, which they actually need in the amounts that they actually need with their own resources, these pharmaceutical corporations, which the government's given a monopoly on the production of these resources, invoke a copyright and hit them with a DMCA.
Also, I just wanted to bring this up. Has anyone heard anything about Trump trying to illegalize hoarding?
I would not be surprised. I have not heard about this.
Neither have I.
No, I sent you an article about it. It wasn't Trump. It was the director of the FTC said that if people were quote unquote hoarding resources, the government was gonna come seize them.
Well, it's funny because what defines hoarding is entirely arbitrary. It's going to be a certain arbitrary threshold that no one is going to know ahead of time, and will probably even be based on the arbitrary whims of whoever happens to be enforcing this edict that breaks into your home without even a search warrant, of course.
Mm-hmm. It almost reminds me of something. It almost just let me finish this. It almost reminds me of something, and I can't believe I'm bringing up a Christian end times movie here, but it almost reminds me of something that I saw in a Christian end times movie from the 1970s, where it was like the global government or whatever that had taken over the world literally illegalized people hoarding stuff, and people were hoarding stuff in that world, in that movie. It really reminds me of that. I mean, I never thought an end times movie would get it right, but wow.
Well, it's again the state nationalizing control of resources. The video I'm going to be releasing this week is a response to the Premier of Ontario coming out and saying he's coming to get any businesses that price gouge. And he specifically called out several Canadian businesses that are allegedly price gouging. And he's like, I am coming for you. I will destroy your businesses if you try to price gouge customers. Of course.
Funny thing about price gouging, the Defense Production Act would have been completely unnecessary if price gouging in the United States were simply allowed to occur.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
what would have happened is that ventilators, which are probably going to be in high demand by hospitals, which are going to be expecting a huge spike in coronavirus cases, is going to cause the producers of ventilators to increase the price to, go correspond with demand. You're going to get entrepreneurs in even non-ventilation production industries, for example, GM, realizing that it's insanely profitable to create ventilators. And so they'll shift production to ventilators. You'll get an uptick in supply to correspond with demand and thus lower the price back down to relatively normal levels. Everybody wins. And the best part is you didn't need to use any government coercion to achieve this. Isn't that magical?
Right?
Right.
It's so weird.
Yeah, if the government legitimately cared about that, what they would be doing is they would be distributing CAD files for people to 3D print these things on their own.
Thank God for 3D printing.
I'm pretty convinced that the government is entirely operating on the basis of if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. They only can use force, and they're going to use force to do absolutely everything that they can.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, that's something that we're going to be putting out with the release of the video Filthy and I are working on, which will be up this week. A couple people in the Back Alley Discord server, I don't know how many of you have heard that story of those valves for oxygen masks, which were 3D printed that got DMCA'd. Well, we made an open version of the CAD files, and we put them up on an open source website, and we're going to be releasing them with the video. Try taking that one down.
Well, people might download it and keep it safe in their archives.
Oh no, you're hoarding CAD files. How dare you?
Well, that's another thing that you're seeing recently that's not getting into mainstream media, but on these state media articles online. You're seeing a pretty noticeable increase in the amount of articles dedicated to trying to scaremonger about 3D printing, trading with cryptocurrency, people homeschooling their children. So it seems as if the state is genuinely scared of people organizing in local counter economies.
Right.
And that appears to be what is mainly happening in response to the state seizing these aspects of the political economy and all of these shortages created by all these loans defaulting. People are organizing locally. There's this one meme that was posted the other day of an Agora ball and an ANCAP ball talking with each other. New regulations. That just means that we have new ways of getting around them now. I mean, and that appears to be how people are looking at it at this point.
I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. These stupid rules are basically being made to be disobeyed.
Yeah. So before we move on, I do want to take a look at the comments in the live chat. First of which is JC Armitage said it's more like COVID 1984 at this point. Well, it's kind of looking like an apocalypse where I live, a little bit. But
I like
fully.
I like the comment that Congressman Thomas Massey made, and I know he's a congressman and priesthood of statism and all that, but his comments made in reply to something that Kentucky has done. I'm going to be vague about that for now.
Mm-hmm.
That what he said was make Orwell fiction again.
Yes, right. Yes. Can't we please? Let's see. Albedo then said the money printer go brr meme is effing godly. Wouldn't you guys agree? I haven't seen the meme, so I don't know.
It's been spammed all over my Discord server since the economy started collapsing, and yes, it's probably my favorite meme of 2020 so far.
Basically, it's a very angry. Sorry, just going to describe it real quick. It's a very angry Wojak meme of a guy in front of a money printer, and he's just like spinning it very, very hard to try to print out as much money as possible in order to keep that graph behind him, which is going down, to go positive. And yeah, he's like fighting it.
It's Red Wojak, like cranking a money printer, and money is like spraying out of it, and every time money flies out of it, there's like a graph behind him of the stock market. It goes up when money flies out, but as soon as it hits the ground, it goes back down again. And then more flies out, and the graph goes up again.
No, and I just printed or I just posted a meme on Discord with that it's a debate stream, and someone's going, which is better, fiat currency or commodity, or like fiat or commodities? And immediately after that, there's a commenter that posted, have you ever tried printing more gold?
I have. It didn't work, and my printer exploded.
Exactly.
Let's see. Anti-Rack says, yay, it's almost like the KKK street. Cool capitalist kids, just so you all know.
To any YouTube reviewers who may be watching this stream, the KKK stream referred to the Cool Capitalist Kids stream.
That's the name that we gave our podcast, which we haven't done regularly in a very long time. There is there's a new type of video Filthy and I are going to start putting out, where we're just going to sit in a voice call, record the voice call, and talk about random things that have been posted in the status posting of our Discord server. Like just dumb things people have said on Twitter or whatever that like normally wouldn't get responded to, but we're going to have like entire videos just talking about those tweets and those posts.
All right.
And I think it's a great idea because, for one, it ensures regular content, but also it's entertaining. It'll be entertaining, to say the least.
Albita then said, "Remember when Palpatine said he'll step down once General Grievous was killed? I remember." No. It's not you remember. It's Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember. I totally remember.
Did Palpatine actually say that in one of the movies, or was that
yes.
He did.
Universe.
Man, it's been so long since I've seen it, so I don't remember.
All right.
Let's see. J.C. Armitage said, "It's government motors, not General Motors. Get it right." Well, yeah, it's a government subsidized corporation, so duh. Let's see. Albedo, ain't it convenient that the coronavirus appears around the same time the economy was supposed to collapse?
It's more than convenient, but we'll say more about that in the video Filthy and I have coming up.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. J.C. Armitage asks, so which one do you think will happen first, the Trump checks or the food riots?
It's tough to say at this point.
I guess in my personal opinion, I'm gonna say the Trump checks. I think the stimulus package that was passed is going to psychologically smooth over this for a very short period of time. Of course, when the checks come, it's not going to be long before people realize that the underlying resources they need to buy aren't actually there, and the food riots will nonetheless happen. But I do think the only thing the stimulus package really does do is that it temporarily gives people psychological confidence.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I was going to say is that you know, I personally try and stick to the gray markets as much as I possibly can, but I still have like family members who occasionally go to the white market stores. Like I have to prepare this because it sounds, yeah, I'm so ashamed of it. But yeah, occasionally I end up going to Walmart because my family goes to Walmart. And we went there about a week ago, and I could already see like empty shelves of food, like that was not normal. So it could be either one. Like we're getting, regardless of which one is first, the second one is not too far after. Is not going to take too long to follow. Food riots are coming pretty soon.
I think we're already in the early stages of it because I'm seeing people fight over food at shopping grocery stores.
I mean, what I saw was like a week ago, and what I saw was like no eggs on the shelves, no milk in the freezers, no meat in the like very few meat products. Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if people are already starting to fight over food because, you know, a week's gone by, and you know, I've heard a few things about shortages, and there was that crop cattle famine that happened in the early part of 2019. It's starting to catch up with producers at the same time that the stock market's collapsing.
Yeah. And then of course we're gonna listen to a lot of socialists going, "Oh look, we live in a capitalist society and the shelves are empty."
Well, no,
yeah, funny how they're always empty in a socialist society.
Yeah, I mean, this is the only reason like it's like this in a state, a corporatist society is because we're going through a total collapse of the political economy right now.
Yeah,
but in a Marxian state, one which operates around central planning, literally all the time it's like this.
Yeah. Let's see. A rappy guy with with Shrek. Nice, man.
Shrek
I'm just waiting for the revolution. Well, what revolution do you all think that means?
I'm going to assume it's going to be some kind of like an anarchist or communist revolution. I have no freaking idea.
Counter-economic revolution.
That would be best.
I know. I assume everyone here is familiar with the YouTuber Non-Compete.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Okay, I know. I was just this week as I was perusing for my next response video, I noticed on his channel he's posted some kind of call to action for all ANCOMs everywhere.
Yeah, all 10 of them.
Yeah. Let's see. JC Armitage asks, do you think they paint the money printers red, thinking that they'll somehow print faster?
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
Probably.
However, I think that they're better off painting them blue because blue is lucky. I mean, I get the idea why they would try to paint the money printers red because, as said before, red makes it faster. But if you want what you're trying to do to actually work, you want it to be lucky, so that's why you paint it blue. And I would not recommend. However, if I had my way, I would paint them yellow because yellow means that they explode.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
Albedo just posted about the sovereign individual in chat. I've been reading that book over the last week or so, and it's one of the most insane books I've ever read. It's not even necessarily a libertarian book. Like, I don't think the authors are explicitly libertarian. It's almost prophetic the way that it's describing what's happening right now. And it's almost exactly like what I've been saying for the last year and a half or so. It's an insane thing to read, really.
Well, let's just hope that J. Neil Schulman's book Alongside Night becomes prophetic.
But what the sovereign individual, what it argues its conclusion, the conclusion for how the economy will evolve, which, by the way, this book was originally published in 1996. What it says is that there's going to be an emergence of a decentralized, what the book calls cyber economy, where people are going to have complete control over their resources, and governments will be phased out of existence because they won't be able to issue central bank loans and they won't be able to collect tax revenue.
So agorism.
Pretty much.
Yeah, well, it describes crypto anarchism, but it's not particularly of that slant. It was written by two economists just making predictions about like the internet, and this was at the time during like the .com boom. So
right. All right. So I wanted to go ahead and move on to the next subject that I discovered shortly after the last stream that we were all in, and that was the alleged connection between the Wuhan laboratory that is which is actually sponsored by George Soros himself, and then
big surprise.
Well, yeah, it's not. I'm not surprised at all. In fact, I'm not even shocked because once I see his name pop up in situations like this, then I'm like, well, I'm not too surprised because he's done a lot of funding for a lot of stuff a lot that you can think of. There's a laundry list of stuff that he's given a lot of money to. So. I'm not sure if he is in fact one of those who is behind it, the corporate cronies that is behind it, as well as Bill Gates. But if they are, then I don't think anybody's going to be shocked, like at all.
Well, I haven't heard about the George Soros connection, but there are tons of weird connections to the lab in Wuhan. It was recently uncovered even on mainstream press that there were people in Harvard University giving that specific lab a bunch of funds and research information. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was connected to a company called Mylan, which is manufacturing a drug which the media is advertising as a cure for COVID-19. And Bill Gates recently announced on a Reddit AMA that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was sponsoring a new project called ID 2020, which, like, you can go ahead and look this up. You can look up the website and everything, and just it sounds so crazy to hear it at first. You might not believe me, but basically it's an organization which is manufacturing microchips, which are designed to be put in vaccines that the government can then use to tell whether or not you've had a vaccine.
Oh, it's like another form of tracking device.
Yeah, and we can already see, based on the fact that the government is already shutting down white market businesses who don't operate in the ways that they tell them to, that they're already trying to gain more leverage over each individual person. So you can bet that these chips that are going to be put in these vaccines, if all these coincidences don't paint a clear enough picture, that's pretty much what it looks like they're getting ready to do here. They're going to announce this drug, which they've known cures COVID-19 and it's going to be distributed by the government. And they're going to then put microchips inside the vaccines, which will have like your bank account on it and will have all your history on it, which the state can then, if you're doing something the state doesn't like, they can make it so you can't associate with your bank anymore. Because just coincidentally around the exact same time, they announced something called the digital dollar. The U.S. Congress announced that.
Bitcoin.
So yeah, I bet those two things are connected.
And what Night Shift just mentioned there, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, I know in meetings that took place, I forget exactly where in California, but they were talking about FedCoin and basically the Federal Reserve's plan to create a government-issued cryptocurrency.
It's not actually a cryptocurrency because it has a centralized network.
Okay, but a government-issued digital currency.
And there's also one other thing that I can't help but be reminded of, and that is in the year or two before that this even broke out, there was basically, I don't want to call it a meme war, but I think that's the best way to put it. Basically just like videos, memes, content creators, basically going endlessly about how dumb, stupid, idiotic, backwards, and moronic anti-vaxxers are. I'm pretty sure you all remember that. I did a video about that, which is, the reason that I did make that video about vaccines in the first place was in response to what I had observed at the time to be a meme war. And I think that's what that was. I think it was actually conditioning by government agents and the government deliberately paying certain content creators in order to steer them towards creating or trying to mock anti-vaxxers. And of course, why wouldn't you want to mock anti-vaxxers? They're dumb, stupid, backwards. And if they had their way, there wouldn't be a polio vaccine because they would just be too afraid to take it. And as a result, well, you basically got an entire population of people who have been conditioned by this, what I strongly believe. I do not have any proof of this, by the way. This is just my hypothesis that they've been conditioned by this to basically accept vaccines as perfectly good, as perfectly healthy, as perfectly harmless, as perfectly a pure 100% benefit, which, to their credit, the overwhelming majority of vaccines are, for an overwhelming majority of people, completely safe. However, we also have history of vaccines being used in the delivery of literally poison. One example I found is that there were vaccines being delivered in Kenya around several tribes, like distributed by the millions. and part of the vaccine contains an ingredient to sterilize people. The result was that 500,000 girls in Kenya were sterilized directly by this vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a question of like, ooh, does vaccine cause autism? Because let's be honest, there needs to be more studies about that before we can make a conclusion one way or another.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
the question is what is going to be added as part of the vaccine, or what is going to be put into your body that the vaccine is going to be used as a vector for?
Yeah, the anti-vax engineered campaign, because that's the thing. It was something which is heavily promoted by algorithms on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, anti-vax, not anti-vax content, but content which was designed to attack these sort of straw man arguments. And that's something that I always found was very peculiar about these debunking videos, is I could almost never find anyone who was arguing that vaccines were dangerous and caused mental conditions. But what I would see is a lot of people making content skeptical of the government having monopoly distribution over these vaccines, citing incidents like the UN distributed vaccines in Kenya, what that ended up doing to the population of Kenya. And that's an argument I never saw addressed. Instead, I saw this straw man argument constantly get attacked. And as a result, the message also, which was portrayed, which was conveyed in those anti-vax rebuttals, was always that the state distributing vaccines, that was a desirable thing, even though nobody ever argued, even though they argued against this straw man of people claiming vaccines cause mental conditions. And the actual argument a lot of people were making was to express skepticism against the government distributing vaccines. So it's like it was a bait and switch, essentially. And now you've got a bunch of people, like you said, who associate expressing skepticism towards vaccines or the government distribution of vaccines with people who think vaccines cause autism. So I'm sure once they start issuing these vaccines with microchips in them, people like us who express, who try and point this out and express skepticism are going to be, that's going to be the way people respond, or at least normies, is, you're just like those anti-vaxxers. I bet you think vaccines cause autism, don't you?
Yeah, even those who take like the what you would call the moderate position, they're always immediately written off as quote unquote anti-vax.
By the way, this is not entirely unsubstantiated. The CIA is on record promoting like conspiracy content for the purpose of trying to associate people who are skeptical of the state with these narratives and creating content as straw mans to take down by state media outlets. Like the Flat Earth narrative, for instance. A major figure in the Flat Earth movement recently was outed as a CIA agent. Somebody who was promoting the idea that the Earth is flat was outed as a CIA agent. So we know that they do this. What Filthy suggested is entirely plausible and is entirely consistent with the CIA's MO.
Mm-hmm. So I don't want to go too in depth about vaccines right now, because I've actually gotten in touch with a libertarian journalist who has written extensively on this subject, as well as another subject that I actually probably most passionate about as a libertarian, which is in the area of foreign policy. you can check out his works. His name is Jeremy Hammond. Check out all of his editorials, columns, blogs, articles. He's written extensively on these issues, and he's a pretty good source of information for anybody who's interested. So, anyways, let's see. Oh shucks, I just lost the darn thing. So isn't there any other developments regarding the coronavirus that I wasn't aware of?
Well, National Guard agents in the state of Rhode Island are kicking down doors looking for people who escaped from New York before the state of New York was quarantined.
Oh, lovely.
That's a story that came out today, and I gotta tell you, out of all the things the state's done so far, that's the one which I think gives me the strongest Nazi Germany vibes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we're starting to get a taste of the first steps into socialism. I've been saying this for several years, ever since I became a libertarian. We've been in the first step. We've actually been taking our first steps into socialism, and I think we're starting to get a taste of it already.
And nobody's socialism.
And people that you would think would speak up against this. I mean, all the Republicans in Congress who are supposedly so anti-socialist, all overwhelmingly just voted to pass this stimulus bill and are saying nothing. The reason is it's all in the name of national security. This is a state of emergency. It's a disaster. We have to do this, but don't worry. We'll give up this will all come to an end when the disaster is over. Yeah,
much like after 9/11, we're going to spy on everybody so we can catch terrorists. And, of course, we're going to have to grope you some at the airport security. But don't worry, that will all go away soon.
I mean, I don't know where you've been, but over the last year or so, there's been this growing trend of so-called Republicans who previously, or even an emergence of figures new to that movement, who previously would be fist-dooming protectionist state policies under the guise of while paying lip service to some shallow interpretation of free markets. Now they're just openly shilling for what I love to hilariously refer to as nationalist socialism. That's basically what it is. They call it the conservative economics movement, but it is it basically is fascism as they're talking about it.
I mean, that article I was doing a reply to not long ago, they were absolutely correct when they said that the economic policies of the 30s and the 40s would come to dominate the following decades. The fact of the matter is, we're still following the same technocratic central planning ideas of FDR, and that has never really changed. The only real thing that's changed is that it's been proven to be hilariously ineffective in terms of maintaining a stable economy. And we're very much at the limits in terms of the political economy and how long it's going to be able to continue to fund the state. I mean, if I want to see some good news out of this whole thing, I just open up usdebtclock.org and take a look at the federal tax revenue.
Revenue declining, debt increasing.
It's beautiful to watch.
At a consistent rate.
So, last thing I want to discuss is the source that Eso shared with me on Discord, and that is where it says cryptocurrency laundering is a national security risk. I do know they have been attacking cryptocurrency during this quote-unquote pandemic.
Well, I mean, of course, people have been sharing around on the back alley and shared to me a tweet showing the extent to which the Roman Empire was debasing their own currency around around 0 AD to 100 AD, if I recall correctly. The denarii was 100% silver. Once you get to 250 AD, it was like 5% silver. This was, of course, done because, well, nickel, iron, and other things can be mixed into the coin to make it less valuable, make it easier, cheaper to produce. They were debasing their currency. And I've been pointing out that around the time of the Roman Empire, when they started doing this, it became obvious to the people that, or what the Roman Empire was doing, that the coin was becoming less valuable. So there was actually a black market that emerged that traded in the old denarii, the ones that had a higher precious metal content, and they were using that as a medium of exchange. It got so bad that the Roman Empire had to outright ban private ownership of older forms of the denarii, and they just started confiscating that and destroying the older coins.
Not to mention, the Roman Empire instituted price controls. I think it was Diocletian. I don't remember if that's the exact emperor, but I believe it was Diocletian who instituted the Edict of Prices, that basically was empire-wide price controls to try and stop the hyperinflation that was going on. But of course, then when the price caps were put in place across the board, businesses just started shutting down. So then he put another edict in place saying that every person had to, by law, go into the profession of their father to try and ensure that there were enough of people in every profession. And it just, rolled downhill from there.
A lot of that is what Ron Paul had explained in his debate with Paul Krugman. I'm sure you all remember that. Paul Krugman was sitting there going, Congressman Paul wants to go back 100 years in economics. And then Paul throws it back at him saying, well, he wants to go back 5,000 years to what the Roman Empire did. Right? Yeah.
It's a very basic thing and a very common thing that we see throughout history that late stage states love to do. It's the only way that they're able to fund themselves, to be fair. They have to debase their currency. They have to continue doing this because guess what? Their legislation enforcers don't work for free. They got to put food on the table as well. And they're not quite brainwashed enough to forego this in favor of rustling someone else's jimmies and getting their authoritarian rocks off. Most people are not motivated by malevolence; they're motivated by self-interest.
Exactly, and what Filthy's saying there about how the enforcers themselves need to keep getting paid, which is why they have to keep debasing the currency to pay their own enforcers. Basically, the only two options they would have is they can either suspend government services, tell the enforcers to go home and wait till the economy finds price levels that account for the amount of currency, or they can print the currency into oblivion. And every single, from the Roman Empire, to the Weimar Republic, to what's happening now in the United States, the state always chooses to print the currency into oblivion as opposed to the former.
Now, I'm no expert on ancient history, but I would strongly suspect that a lot of historical empires, the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, and all of those stuff, would also face the same challenges and probably also responded doing the exact same thing. I don't know this. I'm just entirely speculating here, but I'm just saying if someone were to come to me after this and just like, yeah, you're absolutely right about the Assyrian Empire, I would not be surprised at all.
Well, I would encourage everyone to check out Mike Maloney's channel, YouTube channel, Gold and Silver. He has a series called Hidden Secrets of Money, and in it, he talks to a monetary historian who basically has cataloged every currency that's ever existed, every fiat state currency that has ever existed, and has been able to prove that every single one ultimately went into hyperinflation and collapse, without exception.
Oh, that is hilarious.
Let's see. Albedo said in live chat, January, World War III, February, coronavirus, March, quarantine, April, hyperinflation. Yeah, I wonder what's next for May.
Yeah, April is martial law, food riots, and hyperinflation. That's what we have in store for the next month.
I like the Shrek meme that goes, 2020, would you stop trying to kill us for 5 minutes?
Yes. For 5 minutes. Oh, man. I remember that. Who thinks which Shrek movie is the best? By the way,
2.
1.
I would say 2.
I'd say 2 as well.
Yeah, 2 was great. I'd have to agree.
Honestly, right. I love the there was actually a meme that I saw last year that was like you're coming out of 2019 and it shows like Rick from The Walking Dead all bloody and beaten up, and then it says you're going into 2020 and it shows a picture of Ellen Ripley from Aliens on the elevator, like being like heavily breathing and just getting prepared to go to the alien hive. And yeah, that's pretty much what it's been like, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm. All right. Oh yes, and there's one more thing I want to mention before I forget and before I dive into the weekly song. Washington Post put out an editorial that is attacking homeschooling.
Well, it's really interesting how the media tries to get us focusing on how the state is seizing the economy and how everyone is starting to associate around the state. Yet they're also running all these stories about how scared they are over the fact that people are starting gray markets and are starting to operate around the state. Seems like the first story is not an accurate picture of what's going on.
Keep in mind that the mind of a hatchling is a terrible thing to be allowed to be free.
Exactly.
You know what's even worse for the power of the state? If a parent and their hatchling has a healthy relationship, and not one marred by this third party called government schools, which basically assigns arbitrary tests for kids to fail and therefore get punished by their parents, which creates another wedge in that relationship. You can't have kids having healthy relationships, because if they have healthy relationships with their parents, then they might start to realize that authority does not come from those who wield force and violence. It comes from those who you agree to follow the rules of because they're doing so in your interests, and the moment that they aren't doing so in your interest, you can tell them to go away.
Yep.
If you want to even call that authority.
I mean, you could vaguely call it authority, maybe. I'm not sure.
Well, it depends on the type of organization you agree to.
Yeah. And let's be honest here. Kids were never asked in regards to whether or not they would go to government school. And even if there was a pretense of asking, I can guarantee you that the information was never honestly and logically presented to them. I mean, ask any kid who's been in government school for 6 years, they're going into middle school now, if they want to continue going into government school, if they want to do literally anything else, they'll tell you they'll do literally anything else. Because guess what? Schools suck.
Of course.
Yeah,
but of course, the one thing they are told is that if you don't go to government schools, you will have absolutely no life. You need a high school diploma or else you'll never be able to get a job and be successful.
If you don't go to college, then you won't be able to make it. Do you guys, anybody notice all these politicians saying kids should go to college? You should go to college. Do you all notice that?
Oh, absolutely.
So if that should be highly suspect. If anybody notices that should put a cold shiver down your back, because they literally want to set you up for failure, is what I was going to say. Go ahead, Esso. I'm sorry.
What they want to do is they want to make you dependent on state-run financial institutions. But that's, that's something that happened recently. Is the student loan market defaulted entirely? So, they closed schools down. The state closed schools down initially until the start of April, but now they're closed down until next year, which is something that I just want to remind everybody. That's one of the first things I initially said, is that schools are not reopening again. They're just going to keep pushing the goalpost back, because the truth is that that entire aspect of the political economy is gone.
All right. Is there anything else that should be mentioned before I decide to dive into the weekly song?
Yes, actually.
Go for it.
Kentucky has opened up. This isn't like news from today. You guys might have heard it before, but Kentucky has opened up a 911 hotline for people to snitch on their neighbors if they coughed.
Oh, I think I've heard about that.
Yeah. Tell me again how the U.S. has the moral high ground to the French revolutionaries who snitched on each other for not being enthusiastic enough about the revolution, and the Marxist-Leninist totalitarian regimes who snitched on each other because they didn't like their neighbor, and so they just told the government that this guy was a communist or a capitalist infiltrator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one pretty notable trait about societies in late statism is the state tries to turn people against each other to avoid confronting the state.
Right. All right. Oh, we just lost night shift. Okay. Well, I think with all of that established, night shift's coming back.
Albedo says, talk about Peter Schiff's autistic takes on Bitcoin recently.
Oh, boy.
Oh, like how he got locked out of his account on a centralized exchange, and he started trying to say that all of his Bitcoin was gone because of that.
So basically, he is both an idiot and a hypocrite.
Yep. Now, I will say for the record, I do like Peter Schiff. I disagree with him about crypto, but he does have a lot of good things to say in general.
Yeah.
He has a bit of a raging hate boner for crypto for some reason, though. I don't understand why.
And I don't know. It's not just on cryptocurrency. On monetary theory, for example, he claims to be an Austrian, but he talks like a neoclassical. What he seems to be describing is neoclassical monetary theory. So personally, I don't even really think that he is. I think that he is. I think that he finds Austrian business cycle theory to be convenient for what his true interests are, that is to try and sell gold. But in reality, I don't think he's an economist. I don't think he's an intellectual. I think he's just a desperate gold merchant.
All right. Okay, so with all of that established, we're starting to approach the 1 hour mark. Usually that's when 2 cents is usually done. So, yeah, with that being said, why don't we go ahead and just dive into the weekly song? So, drum roll, please. All right. So, during this lockdown, this alleged pandemic, all of my weekly songs have been related to plague doctors or the or any music video with the song features plague doctors basically, or anybody dressed as plague doctors. So this week's weekly song is Plague Doctor by Bloodbound. There we go. My bad. Sorry. So I will link that song in the description box, and it'll also be in the weekly songs playlist if y'all want to check it out, along with other previous weekly songs going all the way back to the beginning. Why don't we go ahead and just end this with our usual taglines? 2 cents.
Well, that's my 2 cents. You can take it for what it's worth.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Eso.
What?
Do your outro catchphrase.
Oh, thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys next time. We got some great content coming out this week on the Back Alley channel. Sorry that we haven't been putting much out, but stay tuned for that.
Heretic.
Questions, comments, critique? What'd you think about this stream? Am I a gigantic idiot? Leave a comment below and support me on Patreon. Like, share, and subscribe to become a heretic today.
Night Shift.
I'm Night Shift 10,000, and don't buy into the government's BS. Do not surrender your freedoms for anything, including what the government is offering, because what the government is offering is just bullshit. Thank you.
And I am Nate the Voluntaryist, and I will end this, basically this part 2 as we did with part 1. Corey's life matters.
Corey's life matters.
All right. Well, with that all established, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and please come back soon.